1943. I joined up for V6, that's victory in 6 months. From there, I went to Great Lakes, Illinois for my basic training, which I didn't care too much for. I was there for about 3 months, and then I went to Little Creek, Virginia. While I was at Great Lakes, I volunteered for the amphibious force. The amphibious force is a part of the Navy that takes these small boats and carries the soldiers from the ships to the beach. And I was a coxswain of one of the boats. I trained in Little Creek for 8 or 10 months. I get my dates mixed up. And then I went to New York. From there, I went to England. I stayed there till the invasion of Normandy. Then I was in the invasion of Normandy. I drove an LCVP. That's a landing craft vehicle and personnel. I carried a Jeep, 4 men, or I could carry 16 soldiers with full packs. I hit in the second wave on the Normandy beach and got a lot of bullets for a boat. We had a bag of wooden plugs and a hammer to drive in the holes in our boat to keep them from sinking. And we unloaded our soldiers and picked up some other soldiers, or our sailors, that one of our boats got sunk. I was on an LST, which is a landing ship tank, and it's 308 foot long. It has 105 men crew, and we had 6 small boats like I drove. One of our boats got sunk, so I picked up the sailors, brought them back out of the ship, came in on in after we unloaded its tanks. And then we stayed there overnight. And the next evening, there was a lot of air raids during the night. The next evening, we got a load of German prisoners to take back to England. And on the way out of the harbor, it wasn't the harbor, it was just the beach there where some of the ships that got sunk. We ran over a ship, damaged our ship, the LST I was on. So we had to go back to England and go in dry dock. And while we was in dry dock, they decided to send 3 men off each LST in our flotilla home. And I was one of the lucky ones to get to come home. I thought, well, I'm going to have a maid stay back in the United States till I get out of the war. But I didn't. I came back and trained again, and they sent me to the Philippine Islands. I think we was getting ready for the invasion of Japan. That was in 44. I unloaded ships in the boat and with a semi-truck, bombs and food and airplane motors and stuff like that. And then it was hot there, rained all the time, it was terrible there. A lot of disease and leeches and bugs and stuff. Very little fresh water. And then they dropped a bomb, which we were all thankful for. And the war ended, and 5 months later I was home, discharged. And that's it.
And what do you remember about the time at Pearl Harbor?
Well, on the way to the Philippine Islands, we stopped there, but it was over with. I mean, it was already happened. We'd seen all the damage, and we stopped there to refuel. I was on a troop transport. It took us 45 days to get from New York to the Philippine Islands. It was terrible conditions on that ship. I don't know how many thousand soldiers and sailors was on it, but everybody got seasick. I was lucky I didn't get seasick. And we stopped there, I think, overnight, and then we went on. But that's all I seen of Pearl Harbor, which was a mess.
Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I volunteered for V6, that's victory in 6 months. I was 17 when I volunteered. And that's what it was. 5 months after the war was over, I got discharged. With points, they had a point system. I volunteered. I didn't finish school. I went to the 10th grade and then I didn't go right in the Navy after I got out of school. It was a year later before I was in the Navy.
Were there many other people like as young as you were that you were with, or?
Not too many. But I got to be the coxswain of the boat, which made me pretty proud. I had a 4-man crew on the boat. I had a machinist, a signalman, and a guy they called a bow. He dropped the ramp. You know what an LCVP is? It's a 36-foot long boat. It can haul a Jeep, or it can haul 16 men, and you run it on the beach, drop the ramp, and your soldiers take off. I had a 4-man crew. One fellow named Glenn Bronson was with me. Our names were both started with B, so we got to stay together. We joined here together. We stayed together till the end of the war. No, that's wrong. Stayed together till the end of the Normandy invasion. And then he stayed there and I got to come home. Quite an experience.
Where were you at when you joined Pearl Harbor?
I worked for Mitchell Lumber Company. And I think I was working when I heard about that. Then I wasn't old enough really to join the service, but I wanted to join right then. I couldn't. I was supposed to be 18, but I was 17 when I went in. And I was 18 a couple months later. I thought everybody ought to do something. We want to keep this country a democracy like it is. So that's why I did it. It was a great experience, but it was a terrible experience too. The heroes of that war, they're still over there. They're the ones who didn't come back. They say the heroes come back, but they're still over there.
What did you think of the bombing on Japan?
Well, the talk was if we invaded Japan, we would lose a man. In a Normandy invasion, just in a Normandy invasion alone, we lost 55 young men, 55,000. So if we'd invaded Japan, we'd lost 1 million men. And if they dropped a bomb, they'd lost a lot of civilians too. Probably would have killed 10 million Japanese civilians and people. So by dropping the bomb, it didn't kill that many people, but it ended the war and saved 1 million of our young men. So the bomb was a good thing. It's just too bad we didn't have it the year before that.
So you returned home right after the bombing, or?
Well, yeah,
Like
a
the
couple
second
months.
time,
I was
right?
in the Philippine Islands when they dropped the bomb. A couple months later, like I said, he had a point system. So I had the 41 points that required to, because I've been in the European war and went in the Pacific. So they gave me a lot of points, so I got to come home. 20 years old, I got discharged. I was in there 2 years, 10 months, 11 days. I don't know how many hours, but I could probably figure it out.
What was it like coming home?
I come back on Bunker Hill aircraft here. It was great. We didn't have to worry about it. Well, we did too, because some of the Japanese ships, submarines were still out. But it didn't take, I think, 18 days to come back on the aircraft here. And on the troop transport, it was 45 days on that thing. And on Pearl Harbor, we got off maybe 4 hours. So they let us off.
it. That covers you.
Were you here in Ohio during when the Pearl Harbor
Mm-hmm.
attack went on? What were you doing?
Working for Mentos Lumber Company on Route 4 North of Marion.
Did you hear about the attack on the radio?
I think when we come in from work, somebody told us.
Did you know where Pearl Harbor was
Mm-hmm.
located? So you knew that it was a naval base in the
When I
Hawaiian Islands. Okay. Now, were you drafted or did you join?
joined for V6,
And
got it,
what was V6?
victory in 6 months.
Oh, so was when you joined up, did you know that was for the duration or for the?
Yeah, I joined V6. You could join either way.
Okay.
You could join 3 years or 4 years in for V6. I was only 17. So I joined for V6.
And then they
Out of breath.
kept you.
Well, about 5 months after the war was over, I got discharged.
And when were you inducted?
February 3rd of 93. I was in 2 years, 10 months, 11 days.
Okay. So you went in 43.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Where did you do your basic?
Great Lakes, Illinois.
What branch was this in the
Navy.
Okay.
I was a coxswain on a LCBP,
So you landed personnel and
16 shoulders, full packs.
so when I watched Private Ryan, you were the
might
guy.
see me drive one of
You were the
those.
guy.
I drive one of those.
Okay. Were you on the first wave?
Second.
Second wave?
First wave might have been better. They didn't know it was coming. Second one they did.
What beach?
Omaha.
Oh, I see.
Worst one.
Yeah. So what division did you carry in? The 26th?
I don't know. It came from, I think it came from down in Italy.
Okay. May have been the first.
I don't know.
I can't remember their patches. I'd have to get my book out to see. All right. So when you left the Great Lakes Naval Training, did you train on?
Little Creek, Virginia. I trained in the Chesapeake Bay.
Okay. And that's where you learned the amphibious
10 months every day.
driving those.
Yeah, we'd drive into the Virginia Beach.
Okay.
We'd go out. We didn't get a lot of soldiers. We'd act like we did. Then we'd come into the beach wide open and hit it. The object was to get your soldiers as dry as you could. Now that didn't work in Normandy invasion, but I got mine in knee deep.
That's better than most.
Yeah. See, when you make an invasion, there's a sandbar out there quite a ways. Oh, by the way, they hit it low tide so that the tide would come in and force these soldiers up the beach. Because they were scared they would stay there behind these tripods and things. And you hit the first bar, and a lot of guys say, that's it. Drop the ramp. Soldiers go up, they go 4 feet, and they go 6 foot water. But if you know it, you can get across that first bar, sandbar, where the waves have rolled. Then you're going in and get that second bar, and then it's lots shallower water. That's what I did.
So when you practiced at Little Creek, did you practice the whole thing?
Yeah, they had big old
the
ship.
circling around the
Yeah.
transport ship?
Yeah.
And then,
But when they let us off our LSD in the English Channel, we was out 5 miles. We went in, and then the LSD I was on had tanks, things on it. So they gave us a couple hours, and then they started in to unload the tanks and things. And then we caught up with them. We had a hard time finding them with all the ships there. A lot of them sunk. But we found them and stayed there overnight.
so when you, on June 6th then, the first wave went in.
Mm-hmm.
How long did you wait before you took your stick in?
We was in the water, circling. Well, it seemed to be like a couple hours. But it took a long time to go the 5 miles. And going in, we went, all these battleships were sitting there shooting these big 16 shells. Sounded like a car over your head. And we had to go underneath that. See? Well, that scared everybody right there.
Was that the first time you'd been under fire? I mean, from even support fire?
Well, they had mock fire, and some of the invaders from the Market Basin. We did that a lot at Market Basin.
Did you, all right, so did you run through some of the practices that they had in England?
Yes,
Okay, where were you stationed in England?
Falmouth,
Falmouth?
they put us in, it's out on the beach. These English people out in big mansions, I mean, great big mansions, put us right in there. And our boats were tied out.
So did you have to practice bringing the troops down off of the ships by the ropes?
Yeah.
And then you would pull up alongside and they would.
Here you got a wave raising 5 feet. So here's a guy ready to step up to the net. The boat drops 5 feet. So here he goes to the bottom and all he's packing. Some people arms and legs doing that. Because it was rough weather during the Northern Basin. In fact, it postponed it, I think 3 days. Because it was so rough.
So what were the conditions like during the second wave at the landing?
Well, I got 7 bullet holes through the boat. You'd be going in, and Germans had an 88 shell, and they hit the water, and the water would fly clear up in the air and come down over your boat. So I turned the boat. You get nasty gonna turn. There'd be one over there. Hell, I might as well just go straight on in. So that's what we did. But the bullet holes we got were like 50 calibers. Before that, they gave us a sack of wooden plugs. Started big around my finger up to 3 inches, and a hammer. That's what they were for, and they worked.
To plug the holes.
You hit them, stick them in there, and hit them with a hammer.
So you got your. How many men did you?
16.
16.
The swollbacks.
Now, when I saw Saving Private Ryan, Captain Ryan split his stick. He split his men in half and had them coming out
We had lined up on each side.
on each side.
The boat, I believe, was 36 foot long.
Okay.
Of course, the motor, and I was back in the back, standing up, steering it, and the motor was under me, light under me. And the soldiers were all lined up there. In the front of the boat, you see how it dropped.
Right.
Yeah.
So were you the only naval personnel aboard the
No, I
ship,
had
or
a
did you have?
3-man crew. I had a mechanic, a signalman, and a bellhop, we called him. He took care of the ramp, dropped the ramp, stuff like that.
So was the landing craft armored at all?
It probably had a 1-inch marine plywood with 1/4-inch steel on it. It was, the ramp was like 3/8 steel. The ramp would drop down, maybe 1/2 inch.
So when you landed the troops on the beach and the ramp dropped, then what?
Well, I seen one of our boats get hit on the way in. So after I backed out, I went around and picked these guys.
Now, did you go back out to the LST for more?
It was in.
It was in already.
It was coming in. That was funny about picking these guys up. Everybody was hiding. So this one big kid was been in the other boat of our boat. He couldn't get in the boat. 3 soldiers got in the boat. I had orders, don't bring any soldiers back. And I couldn't make them get off. I was too scared. I was ready to shoot me. So the sailor, he couldn't get in, so I reached down and got him to the rear of his pants, jerked him in the boat, and he fell right over on my mechanic. And his name was Joe Pollock. And he said, "Hey, Brunson, Bowman got hit." He said, "He just fell on top." He said, "Get up and run the boat." I said, "Hey, buddy, I ain't hit." I threw Trojan down, and that was the guy's name. So that was common. But then we took him back. He had some shrapnel in him where his boat got hit with an 88. But it wasn't serious. The soldiers had a little shrapnel, but they were hurt. So we took him back and put him on any ship that was there. They dropped their big ramp down, and I ran the boat right up on it. Here they come with stretchers. Every one of them guys got up and run off the boat, run right. He said, "Where's the wounded guys?" I said, "There they go, right up there."
So once you got back to did you have to bring anything else ashore?
No, our ship was empty, and it was getting late, so we sat there overnight. And already the Germans had started surrendering, and they brought a big column of them down. excuse me, put them on our LST, and they said, well, you better take them back to England. So we started out and run over a ship that had been sunk and punctured the bottom of a ship, the LST. And we had to go back to England for dry dock. So I didn't have to go back in again. I was there maybe 30 hours total. But then didn't have to go back.
Do you remember the conditions on the beach when you went in? Were the men stacked up like it shows behind
Yes. They were stacked up dead. If they didn't stack them up, the tanks and things would have ran over. So they gathered them up, medics did. But the men were all behind the tanks, the weapons carriers for protection. And as the tanks moved, the men would all move up with them.
behind them?
But they, 55,000 we lost. 55,000 men.
When then after the landings at D-Day, what were your other duties once the landing beach was secured and the beachhead was secured and they started moving inland?
Well, like I said, I didn't go back. They come back, and our ship was gonna be in dry docks for 5 weeks. So they come along, they took 3 off each ship. A flotilla, I think it was 10 LSTs. They took 3 men off each ship to send them home, because we'd been over a year and a half or something like that. And I was one of the ones that got sent home. I came back to Oakland, California, on a Bunker Hill. I went over on another troop transport. I came back on an aircraft carrier. And then I came back to Florida. And I thought, well, I'm going to sit here the rest of the war. 2 weeks later, they sent me to the Philippine Islands, liberate the Philippine Islands. I thought, man, I'll go through another one of them phases. But I didn't. I run a boat part-time over there. But most of my job over there was unloading ships, because they was getting ready to invade Japan. Bombs and stuff like that.
So supplies. And
It was on the Eniwetok Island.
anyway, did you have to go through any other invasions then, or
Well,
just
they dropped a bomb.
right?
They dropped a bomb, and boy, that's everybody.
I bet.
And about 3 months after they dropped the bomb, I left the Philippines. Come back here, and it took about 2 months to get me processed out.
Now, did they process you back out through the Great Lakes?
Mm-hmm. Same place. Only about 3 years later.
So then you came right back home and
Back home, they gave me $100 when they loose, and then 3 or 4 months later, they gave me another $200. That's $100 each. Ain't too bad.
So what'd you make a month?
$97 because it was a third-class petty officer.
Yeah, I think I had a T4 in here. It said he made about 70 a month.
You got more for being overseas, all that. But I got 97. That's what I was getting when I left for the Philippines. $97 a month. So I didn't see any action in Japan or in the Philippine Islands. There was some Japanese up in the hills, and the Filipinos would catch them. They killed them. They'd cut their head off and stick it on a pole and walk around town.
I suppose they were a little upset after all those
Japanese
years of
bad.
occupation.
Japanese treated them.
I would have thought after you made the landings at Normandy that would have been
So did I.
plenty of.
So did I. Well, some of the people that were down in Anzio, they came up and made the European invasion too. Because I heard the soldiers talking. On our LST, we must have had, I don't know, 100 soldiers. Of course, like an LST is all hollow on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
They put tanks and ducks, they call them, army ducks. These soldiers would run them, but they couldn't run them in as far as our little boats did. So we took the men in, and the LST brought the big stuff in. Later,
Yeah.
after we were supposed to have the beach secure. They They said if your ship gets sunk, grab a gun and go with the soldiers. I didn't wanna do that.
So what these soldiers say about having to land again? Because Anzio
Well,
wasn't.
they thought they was gonna get, they said, Jesus, God, we went through all that down there, and now we're gonna come over and probably get it. But some of them did get it.
Yeah, that was what would seem difficult to me, to survive one landing after another. You have to start to think that the odds.
Yeah. Well, I thought when they sent me to the Philippines, here I go, invade Japan. See, they put all that training in me.
They
I
were-
did it. Thought maybe it wouldn't come through, maybe it would.
The Navy wanted to get its money's worth, I imagine.
I think they did.
Yeah.
$300.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Well, is there anything else you'd like to? What were your quarters like and the food and everything when you were overseas?
Oh, there, when you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. Well, like I said, we lived in this big mansion, I called it. But they set up a chow hall, and everybody had to go down like 4 or 5 blocks. He went down and he stood in line to get the chow. Those darn English soldiers, they didn't eat as good as us. They sneak in the lines, get in there and eat our food, which is okay. They was helping fight the war. There was a lot of English in our second wave, like they were down that way. Maybe the Canadians were up here, and the U.S. was in the middle. But the food was good. On the ship, we had real good food.
Well, I've heard that the Navy, compared to the other branches of the service, the Navy fed their
I wasn't
people.
too smart at 17, but I was smart enough to get in the Navy instead of the Army.
I was smart.
The soldiers always said, you can't take a foxhole on the ships. Well, that's true. If you go down, you're down, but
While you're up, the conditions are a lot better. Since you had to postpone the invasion a couple of days, were the troops loaded on and ready to go every time the postponement came?
well, they stayed there
Or they just kept them on?
like a bunch of hogs. I shouldn't say that.
Well, they must have been packed in
Yes.
pretty tight with all that combat equipment. Someone said they must have weighed,
Yeah.
I don't know, between 100.
See, the LST is only 308 feet long, 305, I think, like maybe 70 feet wide. But like I said, it's all hollow. You got your bulkheads down each side where you store supplies, and the crew quarters in the back. We had to bring in the soldiers back. See, them ships wouldn't go very fast, maybe 10 knots. Bringing them German prisoners back. There was no toilets down there. So we built a trough up on top of the ship, just a big long trough, and had a pump of water in one side and out the other. We'd let them up there 5 at a time to do that. But some of them, this is nasty. Some of them, they got a porthole coming up out of it. They'd be on that ladder, see, pushing. Well, maybe the guy, Fred, come up, couldn't make it. All these other guys were down below him. Mess. I get talking about that, I can talk for hours.
I was gonna say, didn't the, so that when they got, I take it that the LST didn't ride real well in the channel when they talked about the storms in the channel, and they got most of the troops seasick.
Oh, yeah. Well, a lot of times on maneuvers in England, these soldiers would get seasick. And they're all crouched down, 8 in a row here. Well, this guy gets sick, what are you gonna do? Right on the front, guy in front of him. Yeah, I was lucky, I never did get seasick. Never did.
I'd imagine if you had your sea legs, you had them, but some of
Well,
those
after
guys.
it took us 45 days to get there on a troop transport, get to Philippine Islands. You couldn't walk when you first got off. I mean, you thought it was moving. That was the worst time, I think, I had living, was when that troop transported all them soldiers and sailors. I don't know how many, more than thousands. Jesus. A continuous chow line all day, you know, going. I had 150 cooks on there.
Just to keep them fed.
Had to feed them. Because some of them looked like walking death when they got off there. They'd been seasick or
Oh,
so bad. They couldn't do nothing for a couple of weeks till they rehabilitated.
You have any other questions?
But see, they didn't ask me all that.
Yeah, well, they're,
They did a good job.
they don't have how to ask them what the heck.
Yeah.
Their World War II experience is probably not as.
I was telling her, a lot of young people don't even know what the Normandy invasion was.
That's true.
They don't teach it in school.
Not, well, if we teach it, it's the Normandy invasion took place on June 6, 1944.
So that's what started the end of the war right there.
All that. We, on Veterans Day, we took them all over to the palace to watch Saving Private Ryan, so most of them know.
Well, now they know more what I did.
Yeah. They're able to relate a little bit to some of that. Okay. Yes.
Ask like if you flag the war, then you want to come back or.
Go on? Yes. Were you, your feelings that the war was over and you didn't have to invade Japan or get in on that? And, what were your feelings when you heard about the bomb itself?
Relief. Because after we heard what damage it did, we knew the war was true. Did you a big favor by deciding to drop that bomb? Like I told them girls, we'd have lost 1 million men invading France. And they would have lost 10 million. So there wasn't that many people killed with the bomb. So it saved lives and ended the war. The people that was in the bomb got horribly disfigured and died some bad deaths. But they started. So we ended it.
So I imagine you were glad to get back.
Sure. Get back there and get some American beer,
Yeah.
American cigarettes I smoked in. Yeah, that's bad. There was times I didn't think I was going to get back. When I was heading for Normandy Beach, I didn't think I was ever going to get back.
Yeah, see, that's something that we just can't comprehend. You know, we've never.
I got a son-in-law, or a grandson. He's 24, I think. He said, I don't know how anybody 17 years old could do something like that. I said, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, I'm still kind of surprised that they. Of course, if you went in under that special program, 17, they
Well,
probably weren't.
I lied. I was 18 in March. And I was 17 in February when I went in. But I told him I was 18. You had to be 18.
To get in. They must not check too close, or did you just put the date down
Yeah.
as February?
Well, if they needed you, you said, I'm almost 18. Well, you're 18 more than I'm concerned. So
They just wanted healthy bodies, I take it.
I was a pretty good sized kid. 17.
Yeah, they probably wouldn't question that if you were healthy and good sized. And
Well, I'd been cutting timber. So I built you up pretty good. But it was all worth it. Got 4 great daughters. They're living in democracy. We had all us guys that went where did that. They might not have been. So it was well worth it. I sound like a preacher.
Alrighty. That's good.